I want to go to something that Mitch McConnell said yesterday. It'll give you take a little listen.
I don't think reparations for something that happened 150 years ago, for whom none of us currently living are responsible, is a good idea. We've, tried to deal with our original sin of slavery by fighting a civil war, by passing landmark civil rights legislation. We've elected an African-American president. I think we're always a work in progress in this country, but no one currently alive was responsible for that. And I don't think we should be trying to figure out how to compensate for it. First of all, it'd be pretty hard to figure out who to compensate.
Well, that all seems pretty reasonable to me. The Young Turks don't seem to agree though, so they called in their all-black panel to discuss, which we will discuss right after I tell you about this video sponsor.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Mass media and Silicon Valley censorship of conservatives has gone into overdrive. I want to tell you about a new social network that could be the answer to this suppression. Pocketnet.app is one of the first social networks that has no corporate or central server. It works like a network of equal nodes, kind of like Bitcoin, so it's very difficult to shut down or censor. Based on the blockchain technology, it runs a set of computers around the world, not controlled by a single entity. Only users decide which content is appropriate for them to see, and when you get high ratings for your content, you earn Pocketcoin, the PocketNet system token. All advertising revenue is split equally between node operators and those who publish highly rated content. Create your private key login at pocketnet.app. Viewers of this channel get a limited time special offer. You can get 5 Pocketcoin for signing up at pocketnet.app using the link in the description. This is your chance to get in early, build your reputation, and defend your right to free speech on the platform of the future. Use the link in the description to sign up and get started.
We've, tried to deal with our original sin of slavery by fighting a civil war, by passing landmark civil rights legislation. We've elected an African-American president. I think we're always a work in progress in this country, but no one currently alive was responsible for that. And I don't think we should be trying to figure out how to compensate for it. First of all, it'd be pretty hard to figure out who to compensate.
One could say your treatment of that African-American president was a symptom of a little bit of the behavior that we're talking about. But what are your thoughts on that? Just what he said there.
It was pretty obvious. I'm glad you pointed out his treatment of that African-American first president. Was the way he said, no matter what, my biggest goal will be to make sure that, first off, he's a one-term president. Number 2, fine, that's a party thing. You want to do what's your partisan talk. But also to block everything that he will present, put forward, or anything that will cause any kind of difference in the country.
Look, I don't know much about this Mitch McConnell fella, but is it possible he just didn't agree with Obama politically?
What annoys me is when you can say we elected this black president.
Yeah, he means America elected this black president.
Yet you had no interest in working with that black president.
Yeah, there's politicians who have no interest in working with Trump. Is that a race thing, do you think, or a politics thing?
So the whole point of having the black president, even for folks who are against him, was say, hey, we're done with that now, right? Can we stop talking about this whole thing? We had a black president, get off my damn back. That is what he's essentially saying.
Yeah, okay, whatever you reckon. Are we going to talk about reparations, or are we just sticking to how racist this McConnell fella is because he didn't wash Obama's nuts?
And also, hey, I wasn't around then. I didn't benefit from our ancestors and the humans they owned. So why are we worried about estate taxes? Why are we worried about handing things down to your kids? Why are we worried about building up wealth and then handing it down to your kids can have a better life? I thought that's a legacy of economic legacy. It didn't happen 150 years ago. It doesn't continue. Did it just start with Mitch McConnell's father? All that is BS, and we already know it, but he can just say it and move on because no one's gonna listen to him talk slow.
Well, you don't have to hand your wealth down to your kids. You can do whatever you like with it. But if you're gonna start arguing that ancestral sin should be accounted for, then how far back do you go? Why not have a crack at the African slave traders that sold slaves into the Americas? Why is the fixation on the society that paid in blood for the abolishment of slavery?
It seems that McConnell is really kind of embracing this mentality that I got in law school and that I think our society has clung to, and it kind of, as they say, fetishizes Brown v. Board of Education and thinks that after that, all racism ended. Everything was desegregated and everything was fine. But of course, there was nothing to address the housing issues and the segregation that was created by the federal government back around the time where they had the New Deal. And in the Federal Housing Authority manual, it pretty much said that whites will get benefits financially to have home ownership. Also, whites were subsidized to have home ownership. They would pay less in rent for the homes they did than for the apartments that they were built by the government that they could live in pretty much at low cost, while blacks could not, and blacks could not own property. They could not get loans. They could not own property ownership, which pretty much put whites generational in terms of wealth a whole leg above the black community. Those are things that have happened relatively recently.
Yeah, all of that sounds pretty rough, but it's been rectified. Everyone is now equal under the law. I don't see how you could achieve a better outcome than that. But let's say the government did go ahead with some sort of reparations program, even though the government never actually owned any slaves. Wouldn't that mean that every American taxpayer is footing the bill for these reparations? And who gets paid, and for what? Does someone whose grandfather was disadvantaged by Jim Crow laws get the same as someone whose great-great-great-great-great-grandfather was a slave? What about the descendants of white Irish slaves? What about black descendants of slave owners? Do they get reparations?
My grandfather, 103 years old. He can tell you about that stuff. There are people still living. So to act like, oh, we fixed it all and we gave you a black president on top of it, no, that's trash.
Okay, so exactly what is your 103-year-old grandfather owed? And who owes it to him?
Yeah, I to sort of echo what you're saying, I think what he does is just dismiss our existence.
Oh, he dismisses your existence because he doesn't think the government should be writing checks over something that happened 150 years ago. Something that hundreds of thousands of Americans gave their lives to eradicate. By the way, this is David West. He's an ex-basketball player worth about $35 million. So how much do you want, David? What kind of check would it take for them to acknowledge your existence? What a cunt.
Mitch McConnell is, I don't think you could manifest a worse kind of human spirit or energy, to be honest
Lindsey
with you.
Graham.
Facts. Look at you.
Okay, but
I can give you two more.
You're like, okay, I take it back.
but the idea is that this dismissal, right, of black life, that's been consistent.
Dismissal of black life. Don't agree with me politically? You're trying to erase my existence. Have an opinion on reparations other than just pay black people a fuck ton of money? You're a genocidal maniac. Where do the young Turks find these fucking people?
Something that you two touched on that I want to talk a little bit about, because this report came out that I saw this last week, and it was called The Plunder of Black Wealth in Chicago. New findings and the lasting toll of predatory housing contracts. I think everyone here at least knows about redlining in Chicago, and there is a reason that a lot of predominantly black areas are by the interstate.
Fucking redlining. Didn't that shit happen back in the 50s and 60s? Isn't it illegal now? So again, how do you work out who gets what? Is there a difference between what someone affected by housing redlining in the 50s and 60s gets and what someone descended from slaves gets? What's the calculation? And who pays? Anyway, these people are getting annoying. I'll see you in the next one.